first being built and the brand was in its infancy, there was a hot-rodded version of this that John Cooper built, and the nickname of that car was the Manchester Mustang, and you of all people should know that.
As soon as you say back in the day, Roman, it makes it feel old and mothbally. I think there's probably a better modern term for this vehicle that envelops the feeling and the power and the modern John Cooper works. I would suggest we call it the Hell Kitty.
Alright, I'll go with that. Coming up next on the Fast Lane car, we're going to review the brand spanking new John Cooper Works
Hell Kitty.
Hell Kitty. No, tell me, what did you think of this vehicle when you were behind the wheel? I'll give you my opinion in a second.
Definitely a great engine sound. Initially, it's very sensitive as a car. The clutch is sensitive, the gears are sensitive, but in a good way. They're not hard to operate, they're not hard to use, but they're very touchy. Like you let your clutch out, this thing really fires up. That's the first thing I really noticed. Second thing I really noticed in this vehicle is the suspension stiffer. It doesn't do well on winterized roads.
No.
If you're driving this vehicle on a road that has bumps on, your backside may end up suffering. But again, it has all those characteristics of a very nimble Mini, and you can actually get some power out of it. You change down, you can pass. Chorus music right there.
So what makes this JCW Mini better or different from a run-of-the-mill Mini? Well, starting on the inside, there are different seats with different trim packages. On the outside, you've got a more aggressive aero package, but where the rubber meets the road is right here in the wheels. These are bigger, they're fatter, to make room for these big, specifically designed Brembo brakes just for this model. All right, guys, guess what? I get to take the Mini around a racetrack. And if there's any Mini that is suited to a racetrack outside of the GP, it's this one, the JCW. This was born to be put on a racetrack like this. Now what makes, I think, the new Mini JCW so good is that the basic formula for these Minis was always wonderful. You had a light car with a lot, well, relatively, a lot of engine, and of course, a very nimble car. So the lighter the car, the more fun it is, the better it is around a track. And what BMW has brought to the equation is all of the science, all of their know-how and expertise over the years of building the DNA of a very good handling, let's face it, a race car. So, you know, when the first John Cooper Works Mini, the Manchester Mustangs, were built, they just took advantage of the physics, the dynamics of the car, and that it was light and tossable. But now Mini has added the steering geometry, the suspension, and of course the turbo and the power to the equation, making this car just a real track tool. Nick, I think you're exactly right. There's a thin line between twitchy and nervous and sporty, and this car is certainly on the right side of that line, at least when it comes to its steering, its handling, but the suspension, and you pegged it on these winter-bitten roads, is a little on the stiff side. I think if my wife were in this car for an extended period of time, she'd give me that look, which means, you know...
I always like to say you wouldn't be listening to the engine, you'd be listening to her whining, right? Not the whining of the engine, the whining of the wife.
Yeah, she might not be as understanding. I love how it revs, how it matches revs right there. That's really cool when it does that. And we're driving the 6-speed manual, of course.
Yeah.
And I would highly recommend, even though this can be bought in automatic, you know, if you're going to get a Mini, for gosh sakes, get the manual.
Yeah, one of the things is, though, I'm not too disappointed in the automatic cars because, waving at Mini drivers, you have a dynamic drive as it is, and if you have to sit in stop-and-go traffic, I would rather sit in stop-and-go traffic where you can zip in and out of cars in a Mini than I would in a manual, in an automatic Mini.
But under the hood is where you'll really feel and hear the difference. It's actually engineered to be more powerful. 228 horsepower. There's also a specifically built transmission, and best of all, you can get this in a 6-speed manual. And they say that 3 out of 4 John Cooper Works Minis will be sold with a manual transmission.
The other things about these cars is because the wheels are out on the corner, it has a great turning radius, it's easy to park. So if you have an urban lifestyle, this is a great car for an urban lifestyle. You always find somewhere to slot it, you can get in and out of very sort of narrow streets.
And a track tool that's accessible to a lot of people, because let's face it, you get into a Hellcat and it's got so much power. The first thing it'll do is it'll scare you. The second thing it'll do is it'll try to rip the rear tires off the wheels. And this Mini Hell Kitty is the exact opposite of that. It's fast and powerful and nimble, but it's not gonna bite you. And yet it is fast enough to put a huge smile on your face. And I think that's what makes Mini such a wonderful car to take on a racetrack. I think it's because it's a car that a novice can feel comfortable in, and I am certainly a novice. One of my favorite things about this Mini is the exhaust note. It's got that kind of raspy gurgle when you let off the exhaust. So my question was, is it real or is it enhanced? Is it augmented? And according to Mini, that sound is real. What they do is they feed back the engine note into the cabin, enhancing it a little bit, but not changing it. You know, this competes with cars like the Fiat 500 Abarth, literally. But I also think, I also think it competes with other cars that are more lifestyle-like vehicles that you wouldn't think of, like a Jeep Wrangler. Right? This is the kind of vehicle that somebody who's actually thinking about getting a third vehicle and wants something fun, like a Jeep Wrangler, maybe an Audi TT would actually consider buying.
Yeah, and I think you're right. This is definitely an emotional buy. It's a car for somebody that has passion about driving, and it's a car for somebody who actually wants to have a good time in the car and doesn't use it like a toaster, doesn't use it to commute from A to B. It's not a utensil, it's a passion.
So the question is, why would you get a JCW versus a regular Mini? And of course the reason is because you want the sharpest knife in the drawer, right? Which this is. And according to Mini, the headline here is, like you said, Hell Kitty. It's the fastest and most powerful Mini ever built. I think
it's really for those people who just want more sports out of their Mini. I mean, 230 plus horsepower. This thing is really a rocket, and it's a fun to drive rocket. And if you really need passion,
that's a
and
rocket
excitement,
with a small R.
Yeah. Well, but relative to a giant Hellcat, you know, a thing that has a giant rear wheel drive and huge tires, this is the kiddie version, the smaller version. But you still can have fun with kittens.
So you guys probably know that I live online, but Nick lives on your real TV. And there's something that you do every time you're on TV, Nick, and that is, well, show them. You wear Union Jack socks, right?
Every time I'm on TV, I have a pair of Union Jack socks on. This is a special Mini, and it's being a British car, so clearly, as being a British guy, I had to do something a bit special for you guys, so. There you go. That's especially for Mini.
I'm speechless, Nick. I am speechless. Thank you for sharing with our audience the fact that you are British well, through and through.
To the core.
Yes, yes, it does like to purr here. There's a little bit of Hell Kitty purring. Yeah, that is good.
So beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, it's not so loud that it completely scares the neighbors, but yet it's loud enough for you to hear it, and you can hear that kind of crackle when you let off the exhaust, which actually Jaguar has pioneered now to such an extent that it scares me, but this car certainly isn't the Jaguar F-Type.
Right, but still a good British automobile. Interestingly enough, we were looking at...
Which way, Tommy?
Straight on.
Thank you.
We were looking at the production of the vehicle,
Yeah.
and the engines and transmissions produced in Germany, but the car's still assembled in Oxford at the Mini plant.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, it's more BMW than Mini nowadays, but that's a good thing, you know, because BMW builds some of the best handling, some of the highest revving, some of the best sounding engines in the world, and so I don't look at that as a negative. I look at that as a positive. I think it's great that this has that BMW DNA in it.
Right. One of the things I noticed, I have the sales sheet that goes in the window.
Yep.
And one of the things I noticed on here, which I thought was quite inventive, is it has a boot to bonnet no-cost maintenance plan that comes with the car. And this is the maintenance program for the first 3 years or 36,000 miles, which comes with a factory recommended service, and it'll give you 0 engine oil. You don't have to pay anything for engine oil, drive belts, inspection services, wiper blades, brake pads, brake discs, or brake fluid. It's all included.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Mini is trying to do is up the quality of their cars, so they've taken responsibility for that. And I think that's good. I mean, taking it in for an oil change for the first 3 years for free, that's an excellent bonus to buying your Mini.
Yeah, basically it's a BMW plan, right? So they've extended it to the Mini brand right now. And I agree. I think, you know, Mini, if there is one kind of chink in the armor, it's Mini's reputation for reliability and then the expense of actually getting the thing repaired. Now, we usually don't do reliability testing because we don't have the car long enough, but yeah, it's answering that question. You know, if I buy this, will I have to spend a lot of money to get it fixed?
One of the things that's, you know, is deductive reasoning, but it's a little bit embarrassing, is if you think about this, what's the difference between a BMW, let's say an X1 or a BMW 1 or a 2 series, and the Mini? Well, the biggest difference
Not
between
the engine.
them, well, not
That's
the
the
engine
same
or
engine.
transmission, but the biggest difference is where they're assembled. Minis are assembled in England,
Yep.
and BMWs are assembled in Austria and Germany. Now the problem with that is that's the only super difference between the cars, apart from a different design. But then he comes to say, well, is it because it's assembled in England that the quality is less than a BMW? Well, England has a horrible reputation for quality of cars. You look at Lucas Electrics,
Yes.
basically
Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, the Prince of Darkness. 90% of people in the Lucas Electrics, or 90% of the Lucas Electrics put out, seem to fail. And there's plenty of stories about British cars not being built the best. So is that the problem that's holding Mini back? It's a difficult question.
For all of you Mini aficionados, this F56 model starts out at about $500 more than the outgoing R56, or $30,600, but our as-tested price was $37,000, so it gets expensive very quickly. After having spent an hour driving it, I can tell you I like it. It's fun, it's fast, and so what if it's frivolous? And if it were my money, I would definitely go with the stick shift, no matter what my man Nick Miles says about this Hell Kitty. As always, this is Roman reporting for the Fast Lane Car. Check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and brand new Mini Hell Kitty reviews. See you next time. You said something interesting, right? You said that this car was designed before the regular Mini and before the Mini S. How can that be? I thought this would be the car that would be done third in that line of progression.
Yeah, even though the Mini John Cooper Works hardtop comes out third in the lineup,
Yeah.
it's actually designed first. So the development engineers are determining what do they want the John Cooper Works to have in terms of horsepower and handling, and then they work themselves backwards with Cooper S and Cooper from there.
That's
so that's
crazy.
something, yeah. So that came from a question similar to this, which was, don't you just take a Cooper S and just then make some enhancements? But it's quite the opposite.
All right, well, let's start with what's the heart of the car, the engine. I'll pop it open, and you can open it.
Okay.
And it's a BMW style, right? You got to do it twice.
Yes,
Yeah.
two clicks.
There we go. And And there it is. Now, I remember from the product presentation that this has 228 horsepower.
So yeah, it's 20 horsepower more than the previous generation.
The regular Mini Cooper is like 180.
189. Yeah.
So
Cooper S.
substantially more.
Yeah, substantially more. And this is a BMW Group engine. So this is a 4-cylinder, 2-liter engine. And we start with this. We do some new engine programming that gives it some more horsepower. But also there's a specific piston design within here. And then we have lower compression, but higher turbo boost. So that's how we get the 228 horsepower, 236 pound-feet of torque.
And I heard that you actually have a different turbo on here than on the regular.
So the way this turbo differs from, let's say, the production model is that it has enamel coatings on it to really allow the vehicle to deal with the substantial heat that comes when a car is running at higher performance. So there's a lot of the elements within the engine that really do have more cooling. And to that point, you have this cooling on this air intake here that is purely just for additional cooling on this vehicle. And for example, you don't see it on this side because on this side we're trying to attain the best aerodynamics we can get. So the car is really purpose-built, you know, to have optimal cooling but also the best aerodynamics we can get.
Yeah, that kind of freaks me out. So one, there are holes, and one, there are no holes.
Yeah.
And the reason there are no holes is because if you put holes, it would be less aero.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So that just shows the attention to detail.
And the transmission, is it different than the standard Mini Cooper?
So the transmission has been tuned specifically for this engine. So we're very proud of the fact that we offer a manual transmission and a sport automatic. And we only offer the sport automatic. So whereas in the other Minis we have a choice of a sport auto or a regular automatic transmission, this one only has the sport auto. So it has quick shifts, but it also has something that I love, which is launch control.
Yeah.
So this car has a neat feature in that.
Yeah. Is it hard to engage? Because usually the BMW units, I always struggle with those guys.
It's one of those things where you kind of have to do two things at once to get it to quiet. And that's really for safety. We want to make sure that you're never accidentally engaging a launch control feature.
Well, let's sit down in it. Why don't you come on in and sit down and talk about the interior?
So the first thing is just this one-piece John Cooper Works seat. So this is specific to this car. We also have another one that's trimmed in Dynamica, which is like a suede-like material. We have this John Cooper Works leather-wrapped steering wheel with the contrast red stitching. And then on this is unique to this car, you have this chronograph design within the center instrument, specific speedo and tack that is specific to this car. So it's not by accident. We want you, once you get into this car, to know that this is a very special Mini.
Now there's a little lever here that says Sport, right? And
yes.
If we were driving and I flicked this to Sport, what would change?
So that changes in all Minis,
Yep.
including this one. It changes the throttle mapping so that when you're pressing at 25% pedal pressure, it's actually, and in the sport mode, it's actually 50%. So it's increasing the throttle response. It's giving you more weight in the steering. And then on the cars equipped with dynamic damper control, which is a great feature for only $500, it's actually tightening the suspension. So it's tightening the suspension by about 10%. So it's stiffening up, which is perfect because if you want to have a softer ride, you can just go and back off. And then another thing, which again is in most Minis, Cooper S and John Cooper Works, the sport mode also gives you exhaust popping.
Yeah.
So that's a neat little feature, and that's done all through the engine management, and it's perfect when you're coming down a descending hill, kind of, you get like the most popping. So that's something that we're quite fond of.
Now, I got to ask this question. I was in an i8 recently, and you know that one has completely augmented sound, right? So when you switch it to electric, it's quiet, but when you switch it to sport, it's piping in the sound of a much bigger engine than is actually in the thing. And it's actually the same engine in here, right? It's a not this one, but the three-cylinder.
It's actually our three-cylinder engine that comes in our base Cooper, and it has a much larger turbo, but it is that same core three-cylinder engine.
So are you augmenting the sound in this car? Or are you somehow enhancing it?
So we're definitely tuning the exhaust and all of the sounds coming from the engine.
Yep.
There is a slight enhancement through the audio system, but really a lot of that sound is quite natural. And the way to really test it, and I saw this today, when I'm driving behind other John Cooper Works hardtops, you really hear that exhaust and that popping. There is definitely, the majority of the sound is a natural sound that's tuned into the, but inside the passenger compartment, because we've done so much work to make the cabin quieter from road noise, we don't want to take out that engine noise. So we do a slight enhancement through the audio system, but it's ever so slight, and it really is, you know, a lot of it is natural.
Now there is, of course, that raspiness that you're talking about, that backfire, and that used to happen in old race cars, right? Because there was too much fuel.
Yeah.
When you floored it, when you let off, the fuel had to burn off.
Exactly.
So is that something that is happening in a fuel-injected car, or is that something that's on purpose now to give you that kind of rasp?
It really is on purpose. So after the piston fires, basically it just releases a tiny bit of fuel to allow that popping to happen. So it's purpose built.
That's cool.
A lot of times our engineers are doing some amazing things for fuel efficiency. That is definitely an example where they're doing something just for, you know, for smiles and for fun, and it's something that is you know, inherent in this brand.
All right, let's talk numbers. I got this one, and this is not an inexpensive car. This one we're sitting at is $39,900, almost $40,000. But I guess the good news is that the new F56, which is the internal designation of this, right, starts at only $500 above the old model.
That's right.
So it's $30,600.
$30,600.
Yeah.
So we're only $500 more than its predecessor, and yet it has an entirely new car, and really the car is a quantum leap over the predecessor in terms of interior space and quality. But also you have 20 extra horsepower, you have standard LED headlights, which alone are close to $1,000.
More content, more value.
Yeah, so even the auto climate control, this is now standard on this car, an automatic rain sensor. So these things alone are worth $750. So that $500 increase really is chock full of a lot of product substance. And what we really pride ourselves on is that every one of these cars can be custom built. So if you just want to take that basic John Cooper Works hardtop at $30,600, you can absolutely do that. And I'm very proud of even our base car, like the most basic car with leatherette seats or with any of the features in the car. It really is a fantastic car, even at its entry level.
Now the only thing that bugs me is this, and that's an automatic, right? 'Cause I think you know, a Mini and a manual go together like peanut butter and jelly, and yet you have an automatic here. You say that 3 out of 4 of these JCWs are bought with stick shift.
Yeah.
So this is actually an unusual option to have in this car in America, but in the world it's different, right? The rest of the world.
We're proud, Mini is very proud of the fact that we have manual transmissions on every single variant within the Mini lineup. So that means every single engine and model comes with a manual. And that's unique because in the United States, only about 4% of US drivers have manual, and we see take rates on average in the 20 to 30% range. On this car, we see a range upwards of 60 and 70%. So it's definitely something that these customers, these performance customers, definitely appreciate. A few years ago, we decided to put an automatic in a John Cooper Works for the first time. And this is really for customers in places like Los Angeles that just have really terrible traffic. In terms of the automatic, this is what we call the sports automatic transmission. So this has short gear shifts. It definitely, especially in the sport mode, another thing the sport mode does is keep you in the gear longer, so it keeps you closer to the red line. And this one also has a launch control, which is definitely something that is very unique. Paddle shifters.
Yeah.
So I was driving an automatic today on the drive, and I absolutely loved it. You know, being able to keep the car in third gear, the car just sings beautifully in that gear.
Maybe I'm becoming an old man, but I was just on the track and I like the automatic more. It's just a lot easier to hustle it around the track because you're not having to take one hand off the wheel, right? You can keep both hands on the wheel.
Yeah.
And usually that's not the case because let's face it, some of these in the past have not been that great, right? They've emulated a sport transmission, especially with the CVT option. But this really works. I mean, you really feel those gears popping, and it's nice and crisp, and it was a joy to drive.
Yeah,
let's look at the outside.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. Yeah. No, it's nice. All right. And so coming around the back, you've got this really nice fluted exhaust. And my question about this is, you know, I live in Boulder, Colorado, and people love these cars, but what this does is it prohibits you from putting on like a bike rack or something. Is that a complaint that you get from customers? Because a lot of customers are very active, right? The people who have these.
Well, we, in the product planning role, so the United States is the biggest market in the world for Mini. And we get questions from our colleagues on the engineering side. They said, well, you know, if we move these exhaust pipes, we could actually put a spare tire in there. We could get a lot more usable space.
It's cool, but it's...
But we love this iconic design so much because this really kind of harkens back to the early days of Mini. So we've pretty vigorously defend the placement of this. So it's not perfect for storing a spare tire or doing a bike rack, but we definitely can make do with that. But that's just how we really feel strongly about it, you know, in terms of from a design standpoint.
All right, I'm going to give you two questions.
Yeah.
You want the hard ball first, or do you want the easy softball first?
Easy first.
All right, what's your favorite part of the car?
My favorite part of the car is definitely how it sounds. You know, there's just, you know, there's something about getting on a highway and just going through the gears and just this beautiful sound. And I think what happens on the upper end of, you know, of the car industry right now, you just have some massive horsepower cars out there. You're really into illegal speed territory before the car even breaks a sweat. This car is truly fun, even at 20 miles an hour. You know, you really, you know, it's a very visceral experience. And that's what I love about it most.
And I got to ask, because many people will kill me if I don't. I know you want to talk about this car, but when's the GP coming?
So the GP, no official word as of yet. So there's no announcement. But if you look at history, you know, we've come out with it in 2006 and 2012. So even if we were to contemplate a GP, it would be some time before we even really.
If I do the math, that's 2018. Ish.
Yeah, nothing official as of yet.
And don't, you know, you do the math. I'm really bad at math. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time and showing us the new JCW. And thanks for inviting us and letting us test drive this. It was great.
All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you. If you were to ask me what my favorite accessory is on the new JCW Mini, you know what? Let me show you. Come on with me. And yes, this one has it. It's right here. Now you may be wondering what that is. Well, that is the magic button. And magic buttons do magic things like this. Let me start this car up. Now, of course, this is a performance model, so it's going to be loud. You know what? It's not all that loud. If you want to watch that, just click on me or click below to subscribe so that you can see that video first.